Okay, everybody, I'm going to quickly go through vocabulary as we go through this video for the 7th grade accelerated end of course assessment review. So it will include vocabulary that may or may not in fact be on your test for the ECA, but will most likely be on the end of the year vocabulary post-test. So to begin, our first vocabulary word, and I will say I'm going to read these quickly, and as you are familiar with watching videos, you can pause me, rewind me as necessary. So investigation is an experimentation that scientists participate in to test predictions and hypotheses. A prediction, a statement regarding the outcome of an experiment based on previous information or educated guesswork. Observation, the information collected regarding experimentation that involves using your senses. This generally involves seeing, hearing, touching, and collecting data. Inference is a conclusion based on the observation or what is already known. Evidence, observations or data to support a statement, hypothesis, or point of view. If you aren't familiar with evidence by the end of this year, then shame on me. Hopefully, between rat seeing and all of the data collection that you have done, you have plenty of knowledge of what evidence is in an experiment. Opinion, a personal belief not based on evidence or data. Control, part of an experiment that is not changed and remains the same in order to determine the experimental effects. Data, information gathered from an experiment or an investigation. Renewable resource, materials such as water, plants, or animals that are naturally replenished by the natural processes. Variable, the factor which is changed in an experiment either by scientists or as the result of experimentation. Lithosphere, the rigid upper portion of the earth that is broken into plates. It includes the crust and the uppermost portion of the mantle. Non-renewable resource, materials such as petroleum, coal, natural gas, and many minerals that cannot be easily or quickly replaced by natural systems. Mantle, the layer of the earth between the outer crust and the inner core. Rock, a naturally occurring solid substance composed of one or more minerals. Model, any representation of a system or its components to help one study and understand how it works. Geological time, periods of thousands, millions, and billions of years referred to by geologists, paleontologists, and other scientists who study the Earth's history. Plate tectonics, the theory that the rigid outer portion of the Earth is broken into large separate sections which move at specific speed in a specific direction. Cell, the smallest unit of life. Tissue, a group of similar cells that perform a specific function. Weathering, the breakup of a rock caused by mechanical or chemical processes. Organelles, membrane-bound cell structures that perform a specific function. Multicellular, made up of more than one cell. Organ, a collection of tissues which performs a particular function or set of functions. Function, specific job of an organelle, cell, tissue, or organ. Nucleus, membrane-bound organelle that is the control center of eukaryotic cells that contain DNA. Remember, it is just eukaryotic cells, not prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are the simple cells or the original cells, and they do not have a nucleus. Mass, the amount of matter in an atom. Speed, the rate at which an object moves. Energy, the ability to cause objects to change, move, or work. Distance, the length measured between 2 points. Force, a push or a pull. Precipitation, the movement of water in solid or liquid form from the atmosphere back to the surface of the earth. Rain, snow, sleet, and hail are examples. Atom, the smallest unit of matter. Element, a collection of atoms of one type. Periodic table, an arrangement of elements according to their atomic number so that elements with similar properties are in the same column. Chemical reaction, a process during which a substance or substances changes into one or more new substances. Weather, the condition of the atmosphere including temperature, precipitation, and cloud cover at a particular place and time. Atmosphere, the gases that surround a planet or moon. Water cycle, the movement of water in a solid, liquid, or gaseous form from the atmosphere and back to the surface of the earth. Evaporation, the process of change in state in the water cycle from liquid to a gas. All right, and now we're going to switch out of Prezi. We're going to go to Smart Notebook and take a look at the concepts. Now, I will tell you the concepts are not particularly in the exact order that they are in your study guide, but I believe I've got them all in there. The first thing I want to talk to you about is how you're going to go about answering ECA questions in the ECA. It's a little bit different than what we've been doing on our tests. On the ECA, there will be some questions, not all, you need to read them carefully, that will explain why you chose your answer and why you did not choose one other answer. And so here's an example. It says, what color is the sky when the sun is shining? And the choices are A, blue, B, black, C, green, D, none of the above. So this would be how you would answer this. And we are this year using CER. So any of the questions that have explain why you chose one or why you did not choose another, or explain with the trade-off, make sure that you use CER. So we know the answer is blue, but here is how we would go about answering that question fully. So it says, when the sun is shining, the sky is blue. I know this because when I look outside and the sun is shining and there are no clouds, the sky is blue. I didn't choose black because the sky is only black at night when the sun isn't shining. Based on the evidence of my observations, I know that the sky is blue and not black or green when the sun is shining. So let's take a look at what we've done here. First, we've made our claim. So our claim is, when the sun is shining, the sky is blue. So that's our claim. Now, what's our evidence for that claim? So we'll pick a different color here. Our evidence is, I know because when I look outside and the sun is shining and there are no clouds, the sky is blue. Now, we also, in addition, cited where we got that evidence. We got it when we look outside. So do make sure that you cite where you get your evidence. And in this case, it's actually from yourself. And then you need to explain why you didn't choose another. And so that would be here. I didn't choose black because the sky is only black at night when the sun isn't shining. And again, we're assuming that that's because you've been looking outside. So there's a second piece of evidence cited when you look outside. Then it says, based on the evidence of my observations. So we've made our claim. We've cited our two pieces of evidence, our evidence of what it is and what it isn't. And then we have added our reasoning. So based on this evidence of our observations, we know that the sky is blue and not black or green when the sun is shining. And that would be our reasoning. Now, using 4, 3, 2, 1, that would be probably a 3. Doesn't really go above and beyond, but remember, on the CERs for the ECA, if you get a 3, that means you get full credit. If you get a 4, if you go above and beyond, then you actually get a half a point extra credit. So a 3 is full credit for the ECA. Now, you might ask, well, how would I get that? Well, you would go in and you would give a little bit more information. What about a green sky? Actually, there are sometimes green skies. Green skies come before a storm. So you might add something else. You might bring in some other observation or some information from a chart. And then that would get you a 4 for a CER. Okay, scientific observations. What do you need to know? Well, what makes a good observation? It's based on facts, using your senses, not opinions. And then we need to understand what physical properties are, and hopefully between chemistry and doing rocks and minerals, we're clear on that, but properties that can be counted or observed using your senses that do not involve a chemical reaction. So examples: color, state, size, hardness, luster, flexibility. Those are things that are physical properties. We looked at those with plastics, we looked at those with rocks and minerals. Now, chemical properties. Those are properties that are a result of a chemical reaction. So a change in color, formation of a new chemical, heat, cooling, bubbling, many others. So in the case of when we just got finished with rocks and minerals and we were looking for the unknown mineral, whether it was quartz or calcite, whether or not it fizzed when you reacting with hydrochloric acid. That would be a chemical property because a chemical reaction has occurred. Okay, density. Density we know as the formula density equals mass, the mass of an object divided by its volume. Okay, we know that if something is more dense, it will sink. So more dense sinks, less dense floats. Okay, and we spent some time density, mass divided by volume, working with that problem. So density is the mass per unit volume. Experimental design. What makes a good design? You will be putting together an experiment. Now, by that, I don't mean you'll just list the parts of the experiment, but you, in fact, will create an experiment. So you need to recall that a good experiment begins with a purpose. Quite often for us, it was the challenge question, but it's the reason or the question that you're asking in the experiment. Then your prediction or hypothesis, what you expect, or your educated guess as to what you think will be the outcome. Then any safety precautions, especially if we're working with chemicals or equipment that could hurt us, what are the safety precautions? Materials, what materials will you be using? And I will promise you, any experimentation that you will be doing or setting up will not include any materials that you wouldn't be familiar with from this year. Procedure, step by step. Now remember, we are not doing this for 7th grade accelerated science. Keep in mind, we're probably doing it for a 4th or 5th grader. Can they read it? Can they understand it? Could they follow it step by step? Data collection device, what kind of data do you collect and how are you going to collect it? Tables probably most often are the best data collection device. Graphs, bar graphs, those kinds of things come after you've collected the data. And then conclusion. And here again, we're going to use a 4, 3, 2, 1 in order to get a 3. You're going to need to have all of these explained. If you go above and beyond that, then you could most possibly get a 4. Okay, plants versus animal cells. Just quick remembrance here. Plants have cell walls, chloroplasts, large central vacuole. They're generally more square, rectangular in structure, not always, as opposed to animal cells, which can vary greatly in their shape and size based on their function, and then they have many smaller vacuoles. Cell biology and disease. How do we prevent the spread of disease? Well, we remember that washing our hands is probably the #1 way, but also staying home if you're sick, making sure that you cover your mouth when you sneeze or cough. How are infectious diseases spread? Well, so some terminology that we became familiar with was the term carrier. And a carrier is a person who has the disease but shows no symptoms. And then we also learned the term, and it was different, vector. And a vector is an organism that is not a human, that does not get the disease but can transmit the disease from one individual to another. So in the case of the bubonic plague, it was the flea that bit the rat carrying the bubonic plague. The flea then bit the human, and the human got the plague. We also talked about microbes. Microbes are the organisms that transmit or cause infectious diseases. And remember, we're just talking about infectious diseases here. We are not talking about genetic disorders or environmental disorders. So just infectious diseases, and the microbes that we talked about were germs, in particular bacteria, protists, and viruses. Okay, renewable and non-renewable resources. Go back to your vocabulary to take a look at what those are, just as a remembrance of what in fact renewable and non-renewable resources are. Newton's laws of motion. I'm going to give you these. We have not studied these. Just double check to make sure whether we needed to have those or not. And we do not, so we're just going to skip right past those. So don't worry about those. However, we do need to know plate tectonics and continental drift. So plate tectonics, what is plate tectonics? Well, we have that definition. It has to do with the movement of the plates, the lithospheric plates, that causes the movement of continents. Originally, Alfred Wegener proposed the theory of continental drift. He said, okay, the continents were once this one big massive continent, and that massive continent was called Pangaea. And then Pangaea broke apart, but Wegener didn't go about trying to make any explanation for Pangaea. But later geologists and scientists did come up with this theory of plate tectonics. Now, then the question is, what's the evidence for it? Well, we saw multiple bits of evidence, and you might want to go back and review, but things like fossils that were found in the South American tip of South America that were also found in South Africa, meaning that at some point land animals could move from those locations back and forth. The fact that the masses of these continental masses actually fit together like one big puzzle piece. The fact that there are mountain ranges that seem to extend across North America, stop, and then extend through Europe, indicating that at one point they were together. And the fact that if you look at the ocean shelf along South America and along the eastern coast of South America and the western coast of South Africa, they match up. So a great deal of evidence for the theory of plate tectonics. Okay, so one of the big things, and probably more important than just the little specific details, is that you need to be able to give good evidence and good trade-offs. And so what's good evidence? Good evidence is data that comes from an experiment. It's not an opinion. It's not something you think might be the case, but it is in fact evidence, data, physical or chemical properties that can give you solid information as to an answer, to determine some kind of answer. Trade-offs then are the things that you give up if you are making a decision about whether you might buy an iPad or a new gaming system. Well, what would be good evidence for an iPad? An iPad might have a lot more opportunity to do many different things rather than just playing games. An iPad could be used for school. An iPad could be used to watch movies. An iPad, so there's all kinds of evidence. Well, what's the trade-off? The trade-off is you don't get to buy your gaming system. You only have a certain amount of money, and you would have to give that up. So that would be a trade-off. Okay, RATC, I think you all know how to do this. I will tell you this will be key. One of the big reasons, one of the big things we've been doing all year is talking about RATCing, giving evidence. So you're going to restate an answer that's going to come in that first sentence. Then you're going to give 2 to 3 pieces of evidence, and if you want to get a 4, it's probably going to have to be 3 and well thought out and well explained, and then a closing sentence. Okay, you need to be able to read tables about questions and then give information. So we have this table here of that we actually used. Oops, let's move it up just a little bit. Okay, we have this table that we used when we were trying to identify minerals, and I see there's a little error here, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that out. This should be shiny, dull, or glassy. I'm so bad at writing. I'm using my mouse. Dull or glassy. Okay, so we looked at these unknown minerals, and we knew that there were certain things in the unknown minerals that might help us identify it better than others. So color probably wouldn't be the best. Their colors are pretty close. Translucent and transparent, well, that might work, but they're still kind of hard to tell. Is it translucent? Can you sort of see through it, but not completely? Dull or glassy, again, a little bit hard. But hardness, let's take a look at hardness. Hardness is going to be a definite. A 3 versus a 7. That's a clear distinction between the two. White and white, not so much. Reaction with acid, nice chemical property here. Fizzes with acid with calcite, no fizzing at all with quartz. And then light refraction sometimes shows 2 images, always shows 2 images. So then if we then had this data table presented to us, let's move this up here. See if we can get both of these pretty close. There we go. Okay, so our observations are it's translucent. Okay, so if we've got that right, then we already know it's calcite. But let's go ahead. Dull to glassy, not real helpful. Between 3 and 5.5. Well, okay, we can be pretty confident then it's calcite. Small bubbles form with acid, perfect. 2 images can be seen. Okay, so if we want to say, well, what if this was the definite, made me know for sure? Well, probably this is the most definite, these two, but also this one. So boy, we've got some great evidence, and here's another piece of evidence. So you restate, answer, the unknown mineral is calcite. You then explain transparency, hardness, reaction with the acid, and double refraction. You're in pretty good shape. If it's very explicit sentences explaining how you did these tests, you've got a 4. Okay, and then life cycle of a product. This is earlier in your study guide, and I just added it here at the end. But just a reminder, beginning of life, whatever kind of product it is. We're talking about a computer, we're talking about a iPad, we're talking about a cell phone, we're talking about a glass bottle. We begin with the beginning of life, raw materials. What materials are involved in creating this product? What kinds of energy? Do we get it from the earth? Is it man-made? Then we manufacture the materials. Then it goes to its useful life, and then its end of life. You need to go back to your notebook and take a look more specifically at what those pieces mean, but that's the basic concept for the end of life, for the life cycle of a product. So hopefully this information has helped you with your study guide. Once you've gone through this, then you can bring your questions back, and I will be happy to help you get things put together.